All right, so we're live on site at a self-storage construction that we're doing for a client of ours that we're consulting on. So I wanted to tie in, every contractor I work with tends to like to do things differently. And, this is one thing that I will say that I kind of would do differently as well. So if we're looking right here, and just so you know, we're getting into the weeds today. So if you like getting really into the weeds, this is what we're going to see. So looking right here, okay? So what we're looking at right here is this is how they're molding their shelf for their self-storage new construction. And so there's a couple ways that you can do it, but what they're essentially going to do is they're going to pour this big, huge mono slab, and then the concrete that is going to butt right up to this top edge right here like this. And so if you can kind of see the depth of this is roughly about 1.5 inches right here. And then what happens is it's going to go right up to this, and then they're going to smooth the top off. And then when they do that, everything underneath here, okay, so everything that's going to go underneath that board is going to essentially be what that shelf is. And so what's going to turn around and happen is that finished product is going to turn around, and then it's going to look like something like this. So you got this drop down right here. So you got that 1.5 inch drop down, okay, and then after that 1.5 inch drop down, then you have this ledge. And essentially what's going to happen is the outer walls and the doors are going to come down right here. Now, I wanted to show you kind of why that can kind of be problematic, because if you can see as I go down this concrete pad right here, you're going to see that essentially there's some warping. So when you're using wood kind of as your guide rather than shooting lines or creating that perimeter shelf yourself, what's going to happen is you're going to see that there's areas where when it follows that line of the wood, if there's curves in the wood, you kind of see right here, kind of hard to see initially as you go through, but if you really start to look at it, you're gonna see that line's curved. And so that's gonna have happened as a result of two things. Over there, you saw that they're using nails. So it could have been that the wood moved. It could have been the wood wasn't completely even itself. And so what's gonna have to happen is that when you see that this is kind of uneven right here as you walk through, they're actually gonna have to go back through and cut this out. Now that's actually not too much of an issue. Essentially what you're gonna do is you're gonna get a saw, and then you're gonna set the depth on the saw to the depth of the cut, so you don't overcut that, and then they're just going to basically run it on straight through, and they're basically going to run a line that way. How I prefer to do it is a little bit differently, and one of the reasons why I prefer to do it this way is it's way more time consuming to do, but rather than having that one big piece of wood, that that 1.5 by 8 board or 1.5 by 10 like they have right here, what I generally like to do then is rather than having this board right here, okay, what I would do is I take a 1.5 by 1.5, and then I have boards every once in a while that would basically stabilize it to make sure it's straight, make sure it follows that line all the way down, and then that concrete you pour into this big slab right over here goes underneath and right up against that 1.5 inch board, and then on the other side of this we hand trowel it to smooth it out. And that's how I do it that way. When you do it that way, you don't have to worry about that shelf being uneven, and then you don't have to worry about going back and through and cutting. Especially because if I have an existing facility, when they're cutting all that concrete, dust is gonna be everywhere. I have way more cleanup, so I prefer to just do it right off of the bat. So, otherwise with these mono slabs though, they did a pretty good job. See all these cuts, smooth it out already. And then they're pouring just one slab at a time per day. Let's see, what tools do you use to determine? Yeah, so we're gonna go over that at a different day. We're not talking about supply and tertiary markets today. We're talking about concrete, and we are also talking about site planning right here. And so they got these two sites in one day. Ideally, I like to just kind of bang it all in a day, get all the prep done and go through it and do it. But they're doing one at a time, and then kind of waiting for these to cure. So we've had an Indian summer here in Michigan, so we actually have had no problems with pouring this slate. But at this time of the year, sometimes we have to get heat blankets and whatnot to go through about it that way. So now as we go through here too as well, the other thing I'm looking for too as well is I'm looking at just the general drainage. So over here you can see right behind me over here, they're actually doing a significant amount of work with drainage. That's not a red alarm or anything like that. It's very common that as you're working with the site that you will see that there's some areas of the site that just don't drain as well. So now the time to do it, They don't have any asphalt in place. They haven't really done too much with the infrastructure, and they can still change the drainage up and work with elevations a little bit. One other thing too, when I'm on site, when I'm watching them pour concrete too as well, is that, you know, it's not a big deal if I see them set up, but you see all this wire mesh right here too as well. A lot of times, I see this happen so often, they set it in there, and then what they'll do is they'll pour the concrete right over it, where the mesh is actually just sitting at the very bottom, which really doesn't help. It's supposed to be sitting in the middle of it, or they'll try to raise it as they're doing it. I prefer that they actually have a spacer that they put when they put into the slab. So when they do that, then they don't have to worry about trying to elevate it or raise as they go that. But that right there, they have not put it in place right here, but you see they've done this right here. Now over here in this retention pond, you know, it really depends on the municipality that you're working at, but retention can be a couple different ways for a retention pond. So in this case, they could have it done one of two ways, okay? They could have it set where this retention pond is meant to hold the water. And so when it's meant to hold the water, then there's still water like this. So one of the issues that we deal with in this area particularly is mosquitoes. So you have to have a running fountain, or you have to do something with the water to make sure that it's not just standing still, or you're gonna have mosquito problems. Or in this municipality, what they actually do is they actually have to have, can't think of the name on the top of my head now. It's a hold period before you discharge the water. So they want you to hold the water for some amount of period before you discharge. This is primarily geared towards flooding, to prevent flooding. So this right here, right now, this is not a concern for me because there's a little bit of water here, but you see the rest of the site is dry. So ultimately, we know the drainage is working. The drainage is getting the water here. This right here has probably been only here for less than 24 hours. It's not an issue. But then you see on the other side in the back, you kind of see a white circle. That drainage right there is actually going to take that out to the road and to the storm. So overall, this site, they've done a really good job. The excavator's done a really good job with the elevations. I can tell as I walk through, you know, I can tell where basically the water's being directed. So like right here, if you look at, I'm at a low point, and no secret, I'm right where basically the drain is supposed to be. So these are simple things that anybody can do. You don't have to be a building construction management. You don't have to be a licensed builder like we are, but they're just common sense things. And so we're gonna check back on this site a few times. I wanna really make sure that these pads are poured correctly. Again, I really don't like seeing that that's uneven, but it's an easy fix, but it's something that I really would, when I see that, I would talk to my concrete contractors about doing it a little bit differently, which I'll be honest, if you're not licensed builder, or if you not have experience, it's gonna be tough to have that conversation. They're probably gonna laugh in your face when you go about it. But at least, you know, what I typically have done in the past is I've used like a YouTube video, or I've had another contractor come out and actually kind of discuss it. That's all for today, and we'll be checking in next week.